Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for tuning into LCC Remix Roundtable Edition. This is a discussion where our pastors unpack the current message in a deeper way. We hope this episode encourages and speaks to you.
Welcome back to another episode of LCC Remix. It's so good to have you listening, whether it's daytime or nighttime. Saturdays too. Were you thinking of the same commercial?
I was getting ready to say that.
What was that commercial for? Daytime, nighttime, Saturdays too. It was something local.
We open our doors. That? We open our doors. Da 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 da.
Yeah. I can't.
I don't know what you're talking about.
See, this is
the furniture store or something.
Yeah, I think it was. Anyway,
yeah.
I don't know. See, you can tell we're of that Gen X generation because we don't actually just look it up on Google. We just start to think about like, where did that come from? Anyway, great start to the show. Citizens Bank.
Citizens Bank of Maryland. Conveniently yours.
That's it.
Yeah.
Daytime, nighttime, Saturdays to
yeah.
Citizens Bank.
They don't have nighttime hours.
Well, they did. It's probably why they went out of business.
Nighttime, I'm sure that means you can call somebody.
Yeah, Citizens Bank of Maryland. Conveniently yours. That's right. Anyway.
That's funny. I already know. Cars for Kids. That's my
Cars. That's my 1877 Cars for Kids.
Cars for Kids.
KARS.
Not C.
They're not even playing those instruments.
They're not?
No.
Shocker. No, that's funny.
That's funny. I was talking to one of our young adults on Sunday, and he said, "Hey, I was listening to your podcast the other day. You guys are funny. I don't get any of the jokes, but it's funny."
Who said that? One of the teens?
One of the young adults.
Young adults.
You have no idea.
You're old.
No idea what you guys are laughing at. But
how can it be funny if you don't get the jokes?
I get jokes.
You see somebody else laughing real hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, even though you don't know. You just want to join in.
Yeah.
I love inside jokes. Hope to be part of one someday.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my word. My word.
Is Citizens Bank still around?
No, they're closed permanently, it says, according to the Google machine.
Advertisement did not work.
I did. And they actually have the jingle.
Oh, God.
Really?
I'm not going to play it. I don't know if they'll be able to hear it, but well, why not? Let's just see what happens. You're listening. You're invested at this point. I think this is a commercial. Never mind. Seamless. Old guy issues. That's not it. That's the PNC Bank jingle. Oh, well.
The jingle didn't work.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Anyway. Wow. That's a lot of nothing.
It's a lot to digest.
Yes.
9 o'clock in the morning.
Much like that Mississippi pot roast I had last night at home. It was a lot to digest.
That have the little peppers in it?
Yeah, little pepperoncinis.
Pepperoncinis?
Yeah.
Wow. What's in a Mississippi pot roast?
It's
what is it?
Just, chuck roast.
Somebody in
roast.
Mississippi accidentally spilled a bottle of
hot sauce or something?
Pepperoncini peppers or something in it.
And you put
they're like, that doesn't taste half bad.
You put a dry packet of brown gravy, dry packet of ranch, and then
doesn't that sound good?
And then you
dry
put a whole jar of pepperoncinis with the juice and everything, and then you just let it cook. It's like 4 ingredients. It's really good.
Wow.
Of course, you wake up, if you happen to eat that at 10 minutes to 10 before you go to bed last night, you wake up with 3 a.m.
It's fork tender.
It is fork tender.
But, it is. It is good.
It's a good meal.
That's set it and forget it.
It is. Yeah.
I love the crock
Thank
pot.
you for that. You're welcome for that little recipe. We'll come back next week for another
helpful
set
tip.
it and forget.
Follow Pastor Steve for more helpful recipes.
Next week is Marry Me Chicken.
Marry Me Chicken. I'm not familiar with that.
Never heard? Oh, they say that. There's Marry Me Chicken and there's Crack Chicken.
All right, crack chicken.
Yeah, crack chicken.
I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Well,
Marry Me
crack.
is anything that any kind of like chicken casserole dish that is so good that the guy marry me. I guess that's the point behind it.
One bite and you'll have a husband. Wow. Whether you like
just
it or
take 10 pounds of chicken breast, put it right in the crock pot, 6 cans of cream of mushroom soup,
5 blocks of cream cheese.
Yeah.
Put it on low for 14 days.
14 days.
It's really tender.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's good. Well, I don't even know where to go with that, but we'll just segue into today's conversation as we look at spiritual food. There we go.
Good transition.
The right recipe.
The right.
Oh, wow.
What a
Aaron weighing in.
segue.
For all those who hunger and thirst.
Yes, for spiritual food.
For spiritual marry me chicken.
Marry me chicken. We are looking at Hebrews, our current series, Christ above all. And this past week, Pastor Greg had chapter 10, and he did all 39 verses.
There was
great.
no place to stop.
There was no place to stop. He did a great job.
But not a good place to stop anywhere.
In about a half an hour, he did.
That's less
more
than
a verse.
Yeah,
per minute.
A verse per minute.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You hit the ground running.
Yeah. So let's start the conversation. You want to go ahead and kick us off?
Alrighty. Well,
big takeaways.
It's this is just an incredible chapter, and Hebrews has been just such a cool journey. I really hope everyone's enjoyed it. I know I have. But just to really get down in the nitty gritty and look at everything. But Christ being the better sacrifice or the perfect sacrifice, and it starts off. The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming. So it's all just a point to this. We get caught up in all that kind of stuff, but it was there. It was there for a reason, yes, but it was there to point to something else. Mm-hmm. But the better has come, and that's Jesus. So he lays this out. He's the perfect sacrifice. He's the one that, there no longer needs to be a sacrifice because what he has done. Mm-hmm. And I love the reasoning in here. If you have to offer their sacrifice over and over and over again, is it really doing anything? Is it helping you? Mm-hmm. Or is it just a reminder or a covering, or it's not really accomplishing anything because you have to keep offering that it's not completing anything. And so Jesus came when he was offered as that perfect sacrifice. He completed it. Mm-hmm. And that's super cool. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really, I think that drives the point home.
Absolutely. I think, when you talk about that temporary covering, you go back to, God's example throughout all of Scripture, even going back to the garden. I mean, the first sacrifice is there in the garden in Genesis 3, where, the Lord himself makes coverings for Adam and Eve out of animal skins. And shortly after that, as the story of Cain and Abel, we often think of, well, why, Abel offered from the best of his flock and Cain offered from the fruit of the ground, mm-hmm. And you can assume it was probably the best, but he tried to come to God on his own terms.
His own terms, yeah.
And didn't come the way it was prescribed, because again, God was setting that example. We see it all through the Levitical system, mm-hmm. and it's all that shadow, like you're saying, that foreshadowing of Christ and that once for all. But I like what you were talking about in terms of the conscience, our own conscience. These sacrifices that are offered over and over again, they don't purify the conscience. No. They just make us keenly aware of our own mm-hmm. shortcomings.
Well, you imagine just, mm-hmm. I like everything. As people, we become numb to things after a while. So it really could get to a point where it almost was, you did it just because you were supposed to, mm-hmm. and you were kind of numb to it. And if you weren't numb to it, if we're still somehow sensitive to it, won't you think that something dying because of your sin all the time would wear on you after a while? Mm-hmm. So almost you becoming numb to it would be the preferable thing. Mm-hmm. So every time you had to take these things and constantly there's something dying because of your sin. That doesn't free you from anything. That seems to make the burden even heavier. Mm-hmm. Or you just become numb to it and just do it out of ritual, because you're supposed to, and then it really has no effect on you.
Right.
It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't purify your mind, your conscience. Doesn't remove shame and guilt. Doesn't do all those things. Mm-hmm. But when Christ come, what he did actually frees us from that kind of stuff. He cleanses our conscience. Mm-hmm. We can truly be forgiven, and not still carry the weight of the guilt and the shame and all those things, that burden. We don't carry that burden anymore, And man, you just spend some time thinking about that, working through that. That's powerful, life changing. We can actually be free. You know, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. What is that freedom from? You know, it's from the guilt and the shame and the not measuring up. It's all those things. And so he comes and he actually changes who we are. And, you know, we can be free from all that. And that's man, what a message.
I like the analogy that you used. I mean, we know that all analogies are imperfect. You even alluded to that. You know, you try to with the restaurant and the washing dishes, which I still don't know why that was.
Did you think about that?
I did. I thought about it. I'm like, yeah, why is it that we all know that?
Why? Yeah,
because I've never
universal.
witnessed that. I've never witnessed someone having to wash dishes to pay off their dinner.
Yeah.
Pierce just asked me a couple weeks ago. We were at a restaurant, and he was like, "What would happen?" Actually, it was just this past week. We were in Jersey. What would happen if, like, you ate your meal and at the end you couldn't pay? And of course, well, you wash the dishes. No, I said they probably call the cops on you. I mean, that's the reality of the, you know. But
no, it's interesting how that has just kind of crept into. There has to be a reason for it. Yeah.
I Love Lucy. I asked my wife. She says it was on an I Love Lucy episode.
It seems like it even predates that. Like even go back to old time cartoons.
Well, yeah, cartoons. I remember all that stuff. Yeah, I guess that was.
I guess maybe during the. I mean, I'm just pure speculation. Maybe during the Depression, it became like, what could I do? Yeah, I don't have any money. What could I do for you for something to eat? And someone's like, well, you can wash the dishes.
You can work it off. Yeah,
I think you should Google that. But not right now.
We'll look into that. We'll bring you an update on that later.
We're the cutting edge of important things.
Yes. But I liked the idea, you know, that you made where the bill was already paid, but you have to identify with the one who paid the bill.
Yeah.
And that can cause us to bristle if we have like a religious spirit or this prideful notion in our head that, like, wait a minute, no, I don't want anyone paying for me. No, I this is my, and not realizing that we can't ever pay that, you know.
Well, in thinking about it, almost to me, it kind of brought it to a hopeless situation in the fact that even if somehow I was able to pay, the debt doesn't exist anymore. You know, and you know, I get, you know, that picture in my mind. Jesus is standing on the other side of the restaurant holding the receipt. You know, he's holding it, and that's what he does. He holds the receipt. You know, and what, you know, we go to Revelation chapter 5. That, you know, the scroll and all. It's kind of this, you know, the same thing, but it's not that you can, you know, because of what he has done. And I hope I wanted to really, you know, communicate this, and I hope people understood that it's a fact now, since Jesus has paid that debt. The only choices that we have are either to put our faith, hope, and trust in Jesus, accept him, or reject him.
Right.
There is no other way, and that's why Jesus has that name that's above every name. You know, only one name under heaven whereby men must be saved. You know, and that's because that's the only option there is now. You know, you can't earn it. You can't do anything in your own power. It's only through Christ, and I hope that was communicated. You know, and yeah, it's just it. If you're on the side of rejecting Christ, it's a hopeless situation, and it's so much so that you're eternally hopeless.
Yeah.
But if you embrace Christ and put your faith, hope, and trust in him, it's an incredibly hopeful, because it's not up to you. You know, and I think, you know, this whole chapter really drives that point home.
Right.
You know?
And that is, I mean, Mark will get into it this week in Hebrews 11, I'm sure, with the faith, you know, the Hall of Faith as it's called. But I mean, that really, when you boil it down, that's what our faith is in, what Christ has done. I mean, obviously it's in his person. You can't separate the person from what he has accomplished. But, you know, I think sometimes we don't really think enough on the fact that that's what our faith is in. his sinless life, his atoning sacrifice, his resurrection is that's the only way. And but as human beings, we don't necessarily we want. Mark, you brought it up before. We want a list. We want boxes to check. We want religion, and we try to. You said earlier about going numb. How easy it would have been for the Old Testament people under the Old Covenant to go numb at the repeated animal sacrifice. But I mean, we do the same thing. Today, and you even mentioned how people could be sitting. They are sitting in churches around the world, and even sitting in this church where you have not.
Heard the message Jesus. Over and over.
You're like, well, that's not really for me, and that's a scary place to be.
And later on, that chapter talks about counting the blood of Jesus as a common thing. Yeah, have that attitude, and that's scary.
You can't have any half measures when it comes to that. I would definitely. There's no fence sitting when it comes to Jesus.
No. I think Aaron wants to say something now.
He's intently listening.
I'm intently listening and just have all kinds of these thoughts. But I'm thinking through the fact that so often we don't embrace that freedom that we have in Christ, and we still want to try so hard to be worthy of it.
Yeah.
Like we spend our days, what have I done? What have I done today to be worthy of what Jesus has done for me? And you just can't. There's nothing there, but to accept. And I mean, and I guess a lot of people that are followers of Jesus still sit in that place of not necessarily mistrust, but not fully accepting the freedom that Christ has given us. And we're still bound by the daily sin, and we're still bound by that mentality of trying to always be good enough. And it's just we're never going to be good enough. And until you embrace that, I don't know that you can fully accept, the grace that is given, because of your faith, as Paul said.
And it's and I think the issue that people have with that. You have that one side where people are very aware of their sin and conscious of their sin and feel beat down by it. And then you have the other one, well, I'll never be good enough anyway, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. And so you have those two camps, But that freedom that we have is not the freedom to go out and do whatever because, hey, I'm a sinner anyway. The freedom is we've been set free from those things that bind us. Now we learn how to walk in it now and live a life that's pleasing to the Lord and stuff. We're free from those things, and that depression and that being beat down all the time. One, it doesn't bring glory to Christ because in that situation, but that alone becomes a weight.
Yeah,
that I think takes you further, deeper into that other stuff because now you're spending so much time, looking inside yourself. When our eyes need to really be on Christ.
Yeah.
You spend so much time, I got to, always trying to figure, no, Jesus has done it. Now trust him and walk in it.
Yeah.
But that one may be easier said than done, but that's what discipleship is about, is learning how to do that.
Yeah.
And so that getting away from that weight of that inward gazing all the time, say humility is not putting yourself down. Humility is forgetting about yourself. But we think, you got that Christian ease or whatever, that humility is beating yourself down, always putting yourself down. I'm not this, I'm not that. That's not humility, that's pride.
Yeah.
And so humility actually is you forget about yourself. You don't even give yourself a second thought because you're looking outward all the time, not inward. And I think that guilt and all that stuff, we're always trying to measure up. It causes us to look inward all the time. And we get consumed with all those things, which we be looking out, looking at Christ and through his eyes, seeing the people around us, how we can bless, how we can minister, and those kind of things. And we always have that. We do fall short, but realize we rest in the grace of God that even in my shortcomings, what he has done is enough. And I can live. It gives me the freedom now to live this life and to bring glory to God in my life and also to be a blessing for other people. And so yeah, that's a thing we get stuck in some. And I grew up in a Pentecostal holiness church, and so that was kind of beat into you all the time, And
He was really beat into him. No.
yeah, literally. And don't act up in church. Woo. But and it kind of dress code and the length of your hair and all this kind of had all this kind of thing, and there is a degree there should be a kind of dress code at some point. There should be but that's not the measure of holiness. Mm-hmm. The measure of holiness is learning how to walk in grace. And then because of that, then you learn how to live and walk out what God has, Oswald Chambers put it, work out what God has put in, and so that's the journey we're in. That's discipleship.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about walking in grace. I mean, that's obviously walking, receiving grace into our lives from the Lord. But like you're saying, seeing others and extending grace to everyone around us. I mean, it's that flow of it both ways. It's not you mentioned a minute ago, the tendency for some to be so focused on self. And I was thinking, in our modern day world, that's how everyone is always talking about like themselves. And, we understand like the Lord has designed us. There obviously has to be a come to Jesus moment that we have, obviously. Like we have to self-reflect on like, hey, I am a sinner. I need, but how much of our issues as individuals in the church and beyond, outside the church, comes from too much of a focus on self.
Yeah. This is off the topic thought, but
cool.
I was saying, what is the one invention of mankind that has done more damage?
The wheel.
No, I
think it all started with that. No.
That's probably helped a lot. I think it's the mirror.
The mirror?
Yeah. Before mirrors, you never saw yourself. You always looked at other people.
Well, you just had to look in the water.
Well, you had that occasional, but carry some water around with you all the time to be able to.
Or look at your twin.
Just kidding. Go like this.
It's also a Lucy episode with Harpo.
Oh yeah.
But just imagine before mirrors, you never really saw yourself. You're always looking outward, and now the mirrors. We not only do that, we take pictures of ourselves all the time and post pictures of ourselves. I don't. But
my brother does. He loves it.
What's that?
My brother does. He loves it. 2 or 3 a day.
Wow. If you could see
were
the
you just smoldering? Is that what you were
he gives the blue steel.
The blue steel.
Got his
like Magnum.
Got his gold cross with a chain hanging down. He loves it.
It's awesome. Anyway, that's a little side.
Well, you think I don't know if you've ever noticed it, like when a dog sees themselves in a mirror. Yeah, and it's like shocking to them, and sometimes they want to attack it.
Yeah,
like we almost need to be like a dog.
Yeah, I've had birds attack the side view mirrors of my truck.
Yes,
for hours. Like, what are you doing? Other than pooping all over the side of my truck.
Yes, yeah. And there's one cardinal at the gym that does that to my truck all the time.
He knows. There's that guy.
They're attracted to red vehicles. Yeah. They are. They like those mirrors.
Yeah.
They do their sinful business.
Going back to like how people we think of ourselves. You said we think of ourselves so often, and this is, I don't know. Hopefully, the people that I'm referring to aren't listening to this podcast, but maybe they might be. Who knows? Yesterday on Facebook, there was a post about there. Unfortunately, it was a young lady who jumped off the bridge down there, Solomon's Bridge, trying to commit suicide. She survived, and of course, when that happens, what happens? The traffic gets backed up, right? Whatever. And there were people on the comments, people that I know to claim to be Christians. You know what their comments were? I mean, stuff like, man, next time you try to commit suicide, try to do something that doesn't inconvenience other people.
Oh, my.
And keeping you know, I'm just like, I don't understand that. Like, yeah, it's frustrating to be caught in traffic. Somebody, another human being, felt despondent enough to try to jump off a bridge and end their life. And that's what you're thinking about? That's what you're thinking about? You know, if you are listening to this podcast, you got a lot of self-reflection to do. I'll just call you out. You got a lot of self-reflection to do. That is not the mind of Christ. It's not. So it kind of I didn't reply. I just took everything, and it wasn't just one person. It was several people, and sometimes I feel like we've forgotten what it's like to think about others and to put others before ourselves and to have compassion and man, it just like really, it just hit me right between the eyes. I was like, wow, these are people that I thought
that's tough.
Love Jesus.
Yeah.
And this is the, you know, I mean, did you see it? You saw the post? You just saw the news?
No, I saw the news article. I to be honest with you, I've very
seldom. Yeah,
or on social media. Yeah. I can't read comments. I'm about 95% to the point. I'm just going to take my stuff off of social media because I can't deal with.
It's about that point to me.
It adds no benefit to my life.
I keep coming and going on it. I think it brings.
Haven't been for years.
It just brings out
Don't
the
miss
worst
it at
in
all.
us. It really does. It brings out the worst in us because we say things on there that you wouldn't ever say, like out loud or to somebody's face or whatever. And it's not good.
Not to linger there too long, but I do know in the article it said that the individual had stopped and then got out, and the witnesses that were closest, said she just looked back and then just jumped over. And it's like, thinking about some of those comments, I mean, had you been that next car,
would you gotten out?
Would you have been like, hey, stop?
Yeah.
Stop.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do this.
No, you probably would have been blowing your horn. I got a dentist appointment in 15 minutes. I mean, just, it just breaks my heart. Like that's
sad.
That's where we're at as a society. I mean, I guess it's always, has it always been that way? I guess it has been, from the beginning, right? People are
broken, hurting, sinful.
Yeah. But,
and selfishness. I mean, I see selfishness in me.
Oh yeah.
There's times, we were driving back from Jersey this week, and there's traffic backup, and you're not always thinking, well, why is there a backup? And then when you got up to it, you're like, oh, and then you're like, man, we ought to pray.
Yep.
So it's like, same deal. We can be like, traffic, it's going to make me an hour and a half late, blah, blah, blah. And then you realize, well, that person's whole life may have changed in that moment.
Yeah.
We're inconvenienced for an hour.
And then it could be, I always trying to think like, you're running late or you got something, whatever. What is God keeping you from that?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a way that you view things and view life. And it's that trust in God that whatever's happening, he's in control of that. But I just, it just made me think when you said that. It just made me think of that, and it's a little bit off topic. But I was just like,
no, I think it's at the heart of the matter, right? I mean, we can be very self-absorbed, and and it's not a good thing.
Yeah. Compassion, folks. It's what Jesus had. He wept over Jerusalem, right? He stood there and wept because he had compassion over the people that were the same people that would kill him a week later. He still had compassion on them.
He understood.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Yeah, so
we don't take the time to do that a lot of times.
No, I can't remember the exact chapter it's in. It's in the Gospel of John, but it talks about where Jesus knew what was in the heart of a man, And you need to be approached. But Jesus knew what was in the heart of a man, and he does know our hearts, and he knows the depravity and the brokenness, and yet he still weeps over us, and he still comes. He still shows compassion and grace. And you're right. That's the whole point of this Christian walk, is to have the character of Christ formed in us.
Mm-hmm.
That we become the sons and daughters of God. I mean, that's what the Scripture clearly says.
Well, I say this all the time, but like I think at times as believers, we expect righteousness and good actions and right actions from the world.
Yes,
we do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like that. I mean, the whole political thing.
Well,
like I can't believe that they would do. You don't.
Okay. Right.
You can't believe that? Doesn't the Bible say that the heart is desperately wicked? You could know. I mean, these people are prisoners of sin, the same prison that you've been set free from.
The grace of God, there goes.
You do not. They do not have a choice. Honestly, like they're the Bible calls them slaves to sin, where we have been set free. That's the difference. We have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
When we that's what it says right here. If we go on in chapter 10 that you were preaching, verse 26, if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. I mean, that is, we have the choice to deliberately sin or to walk away from it. And like, there's a different expectation for a believer. And you see something like that, and there's kind of comments, and I'm like what are you expecting from people? Like, I honestly expect sinful behavior from people when people act, the way Jesus would act. Then I'm shocked, because I mean I'm talking about like the world, because. It's just an unreachable standard that we're sending that they're expecting from the world, and
Well, I was when you're saying that, it's like thinking back over the last few weeks and the start of the Olympics with the opening ceremony and all the.
Were you expecting
the uproar?
Were you expecting the passion play?
Right, and it's like you look at that, okay. And, and there's people that take offense, obviously, to some offensive stuff. But then it's also like, I'll never watch it. I'm done. I'll never turn it on. And then, but you look at the individual athletes from around the world that are participating, and many that are believers, and many that are being blessed by God and have this huge platform where they're singing gospel songs and they're sharing their faith and they're talking about who Jesus is. It's like, there's always been darkness in this world since the fall. The light of Christ is shining. We that's what we're called to be, salt and light, and not to just be like so upset that the world is being the world. Yeah,
and it doesn't mean that you can't stand up against
you absolutely
wickedness. You absolutely can. But to be appalled or I can't believe these people that don't know Jesus
are acting like they don't know Jesus.
Like, I don't understand.
What we should be more appalled about is those that claim to know Jesus don't act like Jesus. That's the problem.
Preach.
That's the problem.
Yep.
When we don't show mercy and compassion and love, and kindness.
Like I watched the MTV Video Music Awards. And I was expecting good, wholesome entertainment.
I almost spat my drink out. I know,
you're
right.
You're right.
They're like,
I'm serious.
They'll be like full on paganism.
And then Miley Cyrus was up on the pole. I mean, look, what were you expecting? Like, it's the world. Yeah, I don't. Whatever. Clutch your pearls all that you want. Jesus is the only solution, not like better laws or better politicians or any of that. That Jesus is the solution to that. He's got to change people from the inside out in order for that behavior.
Starts with us.
Yes.
It starts with the church. It starts with us So that's where self-reflection
Yeah.
under the conviction of the Holy Spirit is so important. Like you were saying, like look in the mirror, the spiritual mirror, the Word of God, and say, okay, what has to die in me?
Yeah.
And,
But that really understanding like what Jesus did, and like you're talking about, like there's nothing we can do to, the tab's already been paid, restaurant, Jesus has a check, it's already done. Like that changes you. That belief, that understanding changes you. That I don't know if you saw that I shared a YouTube thing that I've been cleaning out my YouTube.
I know I saw that post.
I didn't realize that I had 20 years of just
I didn't
when you're
realize
just
you could
surfing
clean out
through
a YouTube. I don't understand any of that.
when you're just surfing through YouTube, you'll how many times have you just like hit the like button? Yeah, I like that, or maybe I'll watch that later, or whatever. 20 years of like just stuff that I was going to watch later and stuff. But there were some that I did, save, and it was that How He Loves Us video
Jesus Culture,
from Jesus Culture,
Walker,
and she says in the middle of that song, whatever, if you haven't, if you knew the love of God, if you've experienced the love of God, you would know, because you wouldn't ever be the same, And some of us, I'm afraid we haven't experienced the love of God, because we're just the same as we always were.
Yeah.
Maybe worse.
Honestly,
having
maybe worse.
heard the truth and not having the real. I mean, you're when I say worse, you're worse off.
Knowing the truth
You're almost
and knowing that
inoculated.
Jesus is compassionate upon sinners, and like literally like hating people, like because of what they do, instead of being moved to compassion.
I think it comes down to a religious spirit,
Yes,
and so
it is absolutely.
I have a thought.
Okay.
Oh boy!
We just had a raw moment with Pastor Mark.
Deep
Now we're gonna have deep
thoughts
thought with
with-
Pastor Greg.
Greg Handy.
No, I think people have an experience with God, and then they kind of default to a position of preconceived ideas about what religion is.
Yep.
And so they take on a religious spirit almost, thinking that is the end result of their initial experience with God. Instead of being changed and given a new heart, they take on this thing. Someone may have, been, just whatever, living in the gutter, but they still have an idea of what a religious, quote unquote, person is. And so they have that experience with God, and they become their idea of a religious person. They have the preconceived ideas. And they start to kind of live that out, instead of where God gets a hold of you. He changes you. He regenerates you. He doesn't fix your heart. He gives you a new heart.
Yeah.
We begin to have the mind of Christ, and people are so easily offended by all this stuff. It's not us who are offended. It shouldn't be. It's Christ who is offended. And what it should do is break our hearts that these things are happening. Not become angry. We have no right to become angry. We have no. It's not. It's God who is being offended. It should break our hearts, because the end result of those people who are living that way is an eternal punishment.
Right.
And if you had any compassion at all, any kind of, Christ, what you just mentioned a minute ago, wept over people who were soon to crucify him. That's the heart of Christ. And so if we have the heart of Christ, we're God is making us new people, his disciples. When we see this stuff going on, not to become religious zealots or whatever, but it should break our hearts, and it really should drive us to our knees, out of compassion and brokenness for, the world we live in and what's going on with these people. And but I think a lot of people default to a religious preconceived idea.
And it's also how you're discipled. Some folks they hear the good news of the gospel, they give their hearts to Christ, and they're discipled in a church that is legalistic or like you said, lacking compassion, and that's just what they learn. They learn that type of thing. And I talked to my father-in-law. I don't think he listens to this, but he might. But he knows this. But I've talked to him for years. Like he couldn't understand like why I was wearing jeans to church. Like we'd meet him for lunch after church, and they would go to their church, and he'd be in a suit, and I'd show up for lunch, and I'd have a t-shirt and jeans on. Where you been? Church. Matter of fact, I was preaching this morning. Oh, and it wasn't until he got here and experienced like this has nothing to do with what you're wearing. That he's finally been like, yeah, I get it now. Like this has nothing to do with what you're wearing.
He just told me that I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. He literally just said that to me.
Yeah.
We do ask that you wear something.
We do ask that you wear something, but here's the thing: like we don't care. There's your grandfather. He would come in here, boy, decked out. He had a suit on, look great.
Yeah,
that's what he wanted to do.
Safeway sometimes.
Yeah. I got to go get some produce. So I'm going to put a 3-piece suit on.
Right, I'm just telling you.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a cultural thing.
And his generation, I mean, put a collared shirt and tie on for just
my
about
grandfather mowed the lawn that way.
Yeah.
He did. He didn't own a pair of jeans.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told this story before, but this is I was at another church as a youth pastor, and there was some young kids that came to church, regular church on Sunday or whatever, and it was a family, and there was a young kid, and he had a hat on, and one of the pastors of the church went up behind him and grabbed the hat off his head and was like, "This is the Lord's house, son. We don't wear hats in here." And I witnessed this.
And I've been to a synagogue where they made me put one on.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
But like I could see like the anger in that pastor's face.
Yeah.
Whatever. And I could see like the kid who probably his first time at church ever. That family never came back.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I think there was a confrontation out in the parking lot. The father did not take well to that. I'm like, what? Yeah. I just don't understand. Like, I don't understand. I just don't understand how people can have that kind of a religious spirit, knowing what Jesus did, like for you.
When I was in high school, I actually led a FCA group. Believe it or not, I didn't play sports. Which
they had
was
FCA
weird.
back then.
Yeah, all the way back then.
The Flintstones.
It was a fledgling.
The Flintstones Christian Fellowship. No, I'm just kidding.
But so one weeknight we were supposed to have there was a church down the road that was having a revival service, and I think, okay, well let's this will be fun. Let's go down to this revival service as a group. So we went as a group, and I was
a wild
not
teenager.
Yeah, I was not a I was not a snappy dresser back in the day. And so I had this,
unlike today, with his hide and seek champion T-shirt, it's his Bigfoot on it,
my Bigfoot T-shirt on. Anyway, so I had this jean jacket on. It was kind of, it was one of those lined jean jackets, but it's kind of ripped up, And I used to do a lot of hunting and stuff back in the day, so I kind of dressed like that, and it was not, Anyway, so the service was there. We went to the service. Blah blah blah. The guy preaching stood at the back door, greeting people as they left. And I did a little experiment. I went and I stood next to him and waited. And
for him to say something to you?
And I waited. He never even acknowledged me standing there. And I just stood there, never acknowledged me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we ended up leaving. But, but yeah, it's how much damage has that done out of a false religious,
it's a complete misunderstanding of what the gospel is, if you ask me. It really is. Like, doesn't mean that you can't like hold each other accountable, and that you have to turn a blind eye to sin in the church.
But
The church is a whole different ballgame.
yeah, but Jesus gives us some
Yes.
strong words about that with the plank
Yes.
and the speck.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we are to help others in the church. That's the whole deal, is help. Not just point out to make yourself feel more superior. When you point out somebody else's sin, your motivation should always be to help, to restore,
You should do it in
whatever.
brokenness. Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you've got your own self in right. And I just think that, man, we just so far off the mark, and it takes years of teaching and discipling somebody who has been programmed that way to be able to break free from that. Because I've seen it in the discipleship pathway and stuff. I mean, just things that I think are just so basic, and people are like, "I never heard that before." That's not what I was taught. And I'm just like, man, So discipling people is extremely, extremely important, because having somebody say a prayer and raise their hand and then just leave them to their own devices, that's waiting for somebody to come in there and whoever can get to that person and steer them in the wrong direction. I don't know. So I get off my soapbox. I've had that brewing in my head for the last couple of days, and
well, not only is the podcast, for Bible teaching, it's
This is
also a
therapy.
therapy session. So.
pastoral therapy.
So how do we feel? We feel better.
I feel better. I do. I do feel better.
No, it's
Yeah, but I've I had to get it off my chest.
no, I think what we're talking about. I mean, it's the heart. It's the heart of our walk, right? I mean, going through this whole series. I mean, it just over and over and over again in Hebrews. It is the heart of our walk with the Lord, and our relationship with Him, and it just keeps coming back to the greatness of Christ, the superiority of Christ, His what He has done and accomplished is the only way, and how that's supposed to impact us. And we seem to keep coming back to that theme. And so the question for you that are listening, I think, in large part is, and the question that I ask myself, is your life genuinely impacted by your walk, by your faith in Christ? Yeah. Has there been a change? I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And even in the frustrations you're sharing about, people's actions, and we see our own actions that can be frustrating when we fall short, of course, and we're not wanting to point the fingers just at everyone else. We look at ourselves, but if we were to take away the what we view as our religion, for lack of a better term, or what we call a relationship with the Lord, if that were to stop, would our life look any different? And that's a tough question, because if it doesn't look any different, then we're not in relationship with Jesus. Yeah. There's just no getting around it. You're not. Yeah. You're not. It has to look different. It's not perfect, but it has to look different.
Yeah.
Man, I wish Aaron would be quiet. Let somebody else get a word in edgewise.
Sorry, just listening. But it moves to the warning that you talked about. Really, was like thinking through all these things that we're talking about, and to the context of the writing to the Hebrews. There, these Hebrew believers that had some kind of an expectation of what this relationship with Christ was going to look like, and because of the persecution, because of what was happening, the difficulty in their lives, they're turning back, as you said, turning back to what they knew before. But man, the warning is like a 10-pound hammer just being led down. Like there's nothing left for you. And I love how you brought that out on Sunday. It was like, once you've heard the truth, and in some form, those would have accepted the truth. Mm-hmm. There's nothing for you. There's nothing left for you. Yeah. There's nothing. It's just, yeah.
There's no going back.
There's no going back.
No. Yeah.
And I do love, I love verses 23 through 25, just that admonition to us as believers, hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. You ever waver?
Oh yeah.
I mean, come on.
Dude.
Everybody wavers. Everybody has doubts. For he who promised is faithful. He doesn't say, hey, you guys be faithful. He says you should do this because he is faithful.
He is faithful.
Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. Not like, really try to point out everybody's flaws and get
Let us
mad
consider
at
how
each
to
other.
criticize
Yeah.
and
Stir
shame.
up one another to love and good
gift.
works,
Spiritual
not
gift.
neglecting to meet together. Okay, for all of you, I don't need church. I can be a Lone Ranger Christian. Well,
God and I have an understanding.
yes.
He gets me.
He knows,
He gets us.
This is when I'm in nature.
He gets us. There we go. But not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. Do you see the day drawing near? Good Lord, if you don't, you're blind.
It's like,
Yes.
not to get whatever, but it might get weird for a second. I'm just going to be honest. If you look at the world today, and I'm not sounding the alarm, but if you look at the world today, the only people on the planet that shouldn't be surprised about what is happening are Christians, Bible believing Christians. Like, none of us should be surprised. Like, we just looking like, the chess pieces are moving, sure, and we should be peaceful. I mean, we should have peace about it. Yeah. We should not be surprised.
Steve's new book is coming out in January. 25 Reasons Why Jesus is Coming Back in 2025.
That is not. You can't say that. I made a joke. I made a joke
Random House Publishing.
We were doing Genders Revealed, that series. I talked about manhood, authentic manhood or whatever, and I said I wrote a book about what it means to be a man. It has one chapter, and it's just
somebody actually
be
thought,
a man.
Somebody thought,
but all they heard is I wrote a book, and I had someone come and request a copy.
Can we get the link to that book? Is it on Amazon?
And I said it was just a joke. Like it just had
I
three
didn't
words.
really
Be a
write a
man.
It's short to the point.
You ever seen the book like What Men Know About Women?
It's empty.
And it's empty.
Blank.
It's like this thick, but there's no words.
I shouldn't laugh so hard at that.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's
Wow.
anyway. 25 reasons why Christ will return in 25 . With forward by
if you're around the church,
forward
in the
by
80s.
Harold Camping
Harold Camping
from beyond. No, I'm just kidding.
If you were in church in the 80s, you'd understand.
and Hal
that.
Lindsey too. Isn't he one?
Lindsay, Lindsay had a lot of books. Yeah. The late great Planet Earth.
Isn't there a blood moon this month coming
Is
up?
it really? I don't know. You can.
The red heifers were just shipped to Israel from Texas.
So here's
Boy.
So here's the. I don't know. So just something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it's been obvious for decades, but there is a whole industry that's been built in Christendom that's built on that, like the prophetic,
the end times.
End times. My latest book, a lot of them will write it as fiction, fiction, and just say this is what could happen. But there's a lot of people that get on these book tours or these TV shows on TBN and other networks, and people are like, I don't know. It all rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Let's preach the gospel.
Using stuff for profit.
Be wise. We're told to be wise. We're told to understand the times, right? But it should be the motivation to spread the gospel and disciple people and get as many people in the ark of refuge, and that's Jesus. Get them in the ark.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So there won't be a book about that coming from me.
No book.
There'll be a book called How Not to Pastor.
Life story.
How not to minister.
My book's
I'm just telling you.
My book's coming out. How to say things that offend people without even knowing you did it.
Yeah. How to be how to righteously offend. Yeah. Righteously offend.
I didn't even say righteously.
No,
I
I
don't know. Sometimes I just offend people. but
Yeah. Your presence offends me,
it's
sir.
offensive, sir.
Your face is offensive to me, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So yeah.
there
Next
was
week,
something else I wanted to. There was something else I wanted to point out, but I can't remember what it was.
I'll say it then.
Thanks, Aaron.
You know how you
I
do.
mean, Greg. I couldn't tell who was who.
Yeah, that's funny. So I was thinking yesterday,
That's a good habit to get into.
and I wish I had mentioned this Sunday, but maybe it was meant for the podcast.
Okay.
Going through here, and we talk about deliberately setting, which is walking away from the truth and basically throwing Jesus under the bus in layman's terms.
I was trying to think what version of the Bible that was.
Yeah, that was basic street version. I think
version.
the BSV. Yeah.
BSV.
It's a long way from the NKJV, baby.
It is. So the thought was, and I was talking to my wife about this last night. This part here where talks about if how more severely, verse 29, do you think someone deserves to be punished who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, who has treated it as an unholy thing, the blood of the covenant, that sanctify them, and who has insulted the Spirit of grace? And he goes on, it is mine to repay. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And I was thinking about that. How does that, kind of apply or whatever? And the thought, when Jesus became that sacrifice, that perfect sacrifice, he took on himself the wrath of God for our sins. I don't think you can argue that. I mean, he suffered the wrath of God in our place for our sin. That's why he was crucified. And you can go through all that. That word means excruciating out of the cross, all those things. He took the weight of the sin of the world on him, and he bore our sin, for us. And so we haven't, we talked about earlier, it's either you accept or reject Christ. So if you accept Christ, the wrath that you deserved for your sin has been placed on Christ. You don't have to bear that wrath. He bore that for us. But if you reject Christ and what he has done, you therefore now on your own will have to endure the wrath of God.
The wrath of God abides on you.
Yeah. And so that's where it says, because it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. And so in Christ, that has been taken care of. We are hid with Christ. He has become our strength, our refuge, our fortress, all those things. We hide in him, and we don't experience the wrath of God. If you reject Christ, the only other alternative is you stand before God on your own, and you will experience the wrath of God. And that's why that verse says it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God.
Right.
And those are the only two options, once again. And that's terrifying. But the good news is, the gospel is, right? The good news is Jesus has done that for us. And that's part of this whole story is, because of his grace and his mercy, we get to experience those things instead of God's wrath. Not because anything you have done, but because what Jesus has done. And if you identify with, or however you want to say that, if you put your faith, hope, and trust in him, you not only experience God's grace and his mercy and the life that he gives and all those things, you also don't have to experience the wrath of God. But if you reject Christ, that is the only thing left for you, is the wrath of God. That's not a happy note to end on, but it's the truth. And I think that's why it says it here. It's a fearful thing to fall in the hands of an angry God or a living God. Aaron.
You want me to follow that?
Man, I needed that spiritual pick me up to get me through the day.
Well, it is because if you're in
Sinners in the
Christ,
hands of an angry God.
Thank you, Jonathan Edwards. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Yes.
By the way, if you've never been to the Museum of the Bible, there's a good little section that you go through about Jonathan Edwards and all
I need
that.
to go back there again.
Yeah, it's really. Oh, well, you can't.
Yeah.
You've got to go like 7 or 8 times to get through. You know,
You almost have to go by yourself.
Yep.
So you're not distracted.
Yeah, it seems like every time you go, you're going with a group of people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to take you to the
and
to the
everyone's
Bible
going to
Museum.
try to move through this thing as
Yes.
quickly as possible. Like that's not the way.
Yeah.
They're like, there's no food court here.
There is,
There is.
actually.
There's a restaurant. Yeah.
And a lovely gift shop. I love
And a
this.
theater.
Let's close with this. I think verse 32 says, "But recall the former days when, after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with suffering, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partners with those who so treated. For you had compassion
Yeah.
on those in prison." And here's this. This just cracks me up. "You joyfully accepted the plundering of your property." What? Like that's the kind of stuff that Jesus is calling us to. Can you honestly say you would be joyfully accepting of the plundering of your property if it was for the kingdom? If you knew, like, I don't know, sometimes I think we in America, we're just so focused in on our rights.
Well, look at the disciples in the early, they were counted, thank God they were worthy to be persecuted, and arrested and beaten and stuff, so.
Yeah. It's a totally different mindset
Yeah.
because we just want God to be our cosmic Santa
Genie.
Claus.
They're coming. They're coming to raid my house and break up everything I have. Woohoo!
Yeah.
I'm joyful.
I've got the joy.
You know.
in my heart.
But it says, since you knew that yourselves had a better possession and an abiding one, and that's Jesus. That's your inheritance in heaven. So,
Do we believe it?
Yeah.
Do I believe it?
We might get to live it out here before too long.
Yes.
Lord, I believe.
Prophecy alert.
Prophecy alert.
Help my unbelief.
I don't know if you saw, but the Whole Food stores now you can just scan your hand.
Can you?
And they got a trial program where they take the blood vessels. Amazon One's been doing it for a while. Amazon bought Whole Foods, but you can they link a credit card to your. You have this machine. You just hold your hand over. Don't have to touch it, and it scans your hand, your palm, and then you can go in and grab whatever you want and just walk out the exit because it's tracking everything you take and everything you do, and it just charges you as you walk out. Freaky.
There's something like that at the Baltimore. Was it the Baltimore Arena? I went to see a concert, and there's like this whole section where you just walk in, and I couldn't even understand it. Like, I never got a credit card out of my wallet. Nothing. You go in, you grab your soda or whatever, and you walk out. And
Mark that.
And my card is charged. No, I promise you, it showed up on my credit card. I'm not exactly
Everybody
sure.
else was doing it. We were in Baltimore, and
You'll get a knock on your door here.
Yeah, sir.
I tried it at the 7-Eleven down the street. That didn't work.
That's Diet Coke and a pack of Cracker Jacks. It's going to cost you big. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what it was, but like, you just go help
That's
yourself. There's Amazon food stores. It might be the same thing you were thinking about.
They bought Whole Food. Yeah.
Because you just go in, get your groceries, and go out. You never have to talk to anybody. You never have to scan anything. It's weird, just weirdness.
Somebody just jerked the wheel of their car.
Bless him, Lord. Bless him.
Like, what just happened?
Might be. Who knows? I don't know. I get a little wary, not weary, weary and wary of those sorts of things.
I'm weary of being wary. Sometimes I'm wary of being weary.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, we hope that you've been blessed by something that was said today by Pastor Aaron. And
let Aaron close. He does a really
yeah,
good
about
job.
you did a great job. Go ahead.
Yeah, 30 seconds of speaking time.
30 seconds. Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
Thought it was good.
Yeah, we're happy to have you with us this afternoon, morning, evening, whenever you're watching or listening. But
you did so much better last time.
I know. Make sure you tune in next week as we talk about the Hall of Faith.
The Hall of Faith.
Hall of Faith, faith.
Wednesday. Be there. If you're not there, you better be dead.
What is happening?
4 p.m.
Don't you remember Monster Truck Rallies?
Yes.
Sunday.
Grave digger.
By the way, I've been to those. They are
Truckosaurus Rex.
They are so boring.
Yeah.
How could that be boring? I've never been to one, but how could a Monster Truck Rally
I've been
be
to like
boring?
2 or 3. It's just, all right, here comes a big truck. He's going to jump and he lands. All righty then. The only thing that's cool is like when they bring out the motorcycles or the 4-wheelers and they race. That's cool.
Do they crush cars still? They used to crush
They
cars.
jump over cars.
Well, they just drive over them.
Yeah, it's not. It's really not. Save yourself some money. I'm just saying.
I went to one once, but
Yeah,
it was free.
You just
Somebody had
offended
tickets.
the
We went to
entire
Boxing.
monster truck community.
The entire monster truck community has taken great offense. Yeah.
Is that
All
still
12
a thing
of 'em,
anymore?
yeah. it's
No,
gotta
dude,
be.
I remember it was expensive. I'm just saying, like, in relation to the expense of the ticket, I would say watch it on TV.
So you're saying like Ice Capades would be a better value dollar for dollar?
I've absolutely never been to an Ice Capade, so I
You've
don't.
never been? I remember
Really?
back in the day going to
Oh,
see
man.
Ty Babylonia and Randy Gardner or whatever their names were.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never been to Ice Capades
I've been to
either.
Ice Capades.
No.
On a cruise ship one time, they
Oh, man, Ice
No.
Capades at
they had
the
an ice
Capitol
skating
Center.
rink on a cruise
No.
ship.
Before they tore that down, the Capitol
No,
Center.
thanks.
Ice Capades.
You probably saw Dorothy Hamill there, too.
Dorothy Hamill.
That's a blast from the
Peggy
past.
Fleming.
You Fleming.
We all just dated ourselves really badly.
Probably saw Billie Jean King win Wimbledon. Anyway,
And then Michael Jackson wrote that song about her.
Billie Jean.
That's not true. Don't Google that.
These guys know a lot of stuff.
Anyway,
Oh,
I gotta quit. All right, we'll see y'all next time.
God bless.
Aaron, we just destroyed your exit.
you did good, though. You recovered well.
I needed an inhaler.
God bless.
Thanks for listening to LCC Remix. If you have any questions about this podcast, reach out via email at lccremix@lifechurchcalvert.com. LCC Remix is a podcast ministry of Life Church Calvert, located in Huntingtown, Maryland. You can visit our website, lifechurchcalvert.com, or download our app by typing in Life Church Calvert in your app store today.